Good afternoon, all. This is Drishti from People Matters, and we are back with another exciting virtual session in partnership with Disperse on the topic New Age Learning Formats for New Age Employees. Organizations today are in constant flux. The challenges in front of businesses are resistance towards learning, acquiring radically different capabilities, and scanning the horizon for growth opportunities. In this webcast by People Matters and Discourse, we will uncover how the New Age learning formats can boost the four parameters of learning: aspiration, engagement, performance, and ROI. We will cover some of the important aspects of why organizations need to reimagine the current learning systems. What are the expectations of modern workforce? What are the various new age learning formats that drive engagement, experience, and performance? And how can organizations promote a culture of self learning and motivate workforce to take charge of their learning? For sharing the expert views, we have today with us Shweta Kumar, CEO, OD Alternatives, and Kuljit Chadha, co-founder and COO, Disperse. Shweta has more than 20 years of experience and has worked with organizations such as Hewitt, Arthur Anderson, and White Spaces Consulting, as well as large global multinational organizations such as Honeywell, Motorola, and Intel. She specializes in the areas of organizational transformation, team capability enhancement, leadership development, and culture change. While Kuljit, on the other hand, is a serial entrepreneur who relishes taking nascent technology products to new markets. He has worked with over 100 L&D heads globally, assimilating a treasure trove of best practices in the process. Hi, Shweta and Kuljit. Welcome to today's session.
Thank you, Drishti.
Thank you, Drishti.
Now,
Looking forward to the session.
Great. So now we before move ahead and I hand over the session to our speakers, here are some important aspects I want the audience to note. We will be running two poll questions today. So I request everyone to open menti.com, MENTI, menti.com. You can find the link on the comment box at your screen. Type in the code and be ready when the poll questions come to answer them. The code is 725645. I repeat, the code is 725645. We request your participation when announced by the speakers. We have also saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of this webcast. For those who are live, can simply post questions at any time during the session in the comment section on your right side of the screen. We will try to respond as many questions as time allows. Now, as we have an exciting topic to discuss, without any further delay, I'll hand it over to Kuljit and Shweta. Over to you, Kuljit.
Thank you, Drishti. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kulji Chadha. Um, so, can you move to the next slide? Okay. So, the key part is before we jump into understanding what learning formats work, it's important to understand your learners. So, today, if you look at the workforce, approximately close to 50% of the workforce is millennials. Now, how do you define millennials? These are people basically born between 1980s to 1996. So basically, they are about age of 25 to 37 right now. And as we speak of millennials, the Generation Z is also joining the workforce. This is basically the workforce was born between 1995 till date. So, today this workforce is about 50%. It's projected by 2030. This is going to be close to about 80%. So, any kind of learning format that we talk about, the organization has to keep in mind with respect to this workforce. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, let's try to understand what is the specific behavior of this workforce. So, we like to look at this workforce in three different dimensions. One is what is their learning preference, the level of collaboration, and the third dimension is about career aspiration. Now, the first one everyone knows, the current buzzword is around micro learning format. But I would like to share a very interesting data point here. About a couple of years back, edX actually released a research report where they analyzed about 7 million videos across close to 150,000 users. Now, the interesting part is the ideal optimal length of the video that was seen was 6 to 7 minutes. And the important point was at any point where the length of the video was more than this, the dropout rates were as high as 60 to 70%. So, micro learning formats are extremely important. The second one, we know mobile. Everyone uses mobile. So, it's the primary consumption device. Now, I would like to stress upon the third bullet point over here is languages. Now, the large workforce today, if you see, is the frontline workforce. There's an interesting report which came out by Google which said, 90% of the world's workforce is actually mobile and frontline. But when you look at the technology investment for this workforce, it's less than 10%. Now, this workforce means the Ola drivers, the Uber drivers, the Swiggy delivery boys, insurance agents. Now, if you look at India, India is very peculiar. Less than 50% of the workforce speaks Hindi. So the remaining 50% has almost close to about 20 to 30 different languages. Now, it's important that when they consume the content, they consume in the language that they're comfortable with. So language is a big thing that we need to keep in mind when creating content for this workforce. Third is we are a generation of Netflix. Rather than giving us boring content, which is educational in format, it should be in the form of edutainment. So these are 3 or 4 key points that we need to keep in mind when we're creating content for millennials. Third, the second pillar is around collaboration. Now, specifically on the collaboration, we are social people, but we like to interact more digitally than physically. So any kind of learning format has to be in a collaborative fashion. Now, here, if you look at a recent report from Bersin, which said about the collaborative learning percentage has increased from 10% to 30% in the last 3 to 5 years. So more and more learners are finding it more and more comfortable in collaborative learning. So this is the second dimension that we need to keep in mind when we create any kind of a learning format. The third one revolves around career aspirations. If you look at the LinkedIn's recent report on workplace, now there is an interesting part which said, 94% of the people actually said, if the organization invests into my career development, then there's a higher chance for me to actually stay back with the organization. So any kind of learning formats that you provide to the learners, it has to clearly tie up with the career aspirations they have. So any kind of learning formats that you as an organization create, keep in mind who the learner is. Look into what are the behaviors of the learner across 3 dimensions, which is learning preferences, collaboration, and their career aspirations. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, the third part revolves around content. Content, as we see, can be looked into, again, 2 dimensions. Do you want to create content or you want to curate content? Now, when we look at creation, it's basically bespoke content. So probably for organizations where they want to do content which is very specific to them, which could be product videos, product e-learning, process e-learning, then you actually go and invest your dollars and create the content. So that's one kind of the repository. The second 2 key repositories, one is MOOC. MOOC basically stands for Massively Open Online Courses. So the organizations have to pay dollars to actually provide these courses to their learners. So that's the second big repository. But the third repository, which is very, very critical, which people have not exploited, is web. So there are a lot of good content, let it be soft skills or hard skills, which is available on web. But the problem is, it's a huge challenge to search that content, assign it to the user, and then track the analytics. So as the L&D head, as the CHR of an organization, you have to define a clear balance between which content has to be created internally and which part of the content has to be sourced externally. Again, I would like to quote a specific data point from LinkedIn Learning Report. When they actually spoke to multiple L&Ds, actually 85% of them said that we actually create a lot of content internally. But of course, there's going to be an overlap. 73% people also mentioned we actually source content from outside. So both of these content formats are extremely important. We just need to take a right judgment call to decide which courses we have to create internally and which courses we have to get from the external resources. Can we move to the next slide, please? Can we launch the poll, please, here? So we're going to do a quick poll just to understand your experience as far as the challenges that as the L&D heads of the organization you face as far as content is concerned. Okay, we'll give a couple of more minutes to see the kind of responses we are seeing. Okay, so let's try to, okay, the graphs are moving. Let's wait for a couple of more seconds actually. Yeah. This is interesting. There's some interesting surprises actually. Okay, so let's try to infer some of the data points that we've received so far. Now, what's interesting is I kind of actually expected that if you look at two biggest challenges is content creation, let it be creation or curation, it's expensive and it's time consuming. So if you see right now, almost 52% people say that, creating content is highly expensive and it's very time consuming. The third parameter, which is extremely critical, and I think Shweta is going to give a lot of her experience on that, is creating very personalized learning paths for specific organizations. So, the third parameter, which looks like, is creating personalized learning paths. What I'm very surprised to see is a lot of organizations are not facing a challenge on publishing content in multiple languages. When I speak to a lot of organizations, especially that have gig economy, which is basically Ubers, Olas, and the insurance agents, it becomes extremely critical to quickly and at a fast pace to publish content in multiple languages. And the last is, of course, 18% people have mentioned that refreshing content, maintaining content is expensive. So this is interesting. I think the only deviation that I saw was the language parameter, but rest of them is pretty much as per the expectations. Any comments that you would like to mention on the chat, please feel free to mention your comments with respect to the specific poll. Okay, can we go back to the deck, please? Okay, so let's now talk about how do you actually take care of some of the challenges that you mentioned. For example, you mentioned that creating content is expensive and it's time consuming. And then the third most important one is about creating personalized paths. So I'm going to talk about a lot about the first two challenges that you mentioned. And during the second part of the webinar, Shweta is going to share her experience on how we can create personalized learning paths for the employees. Can we move to the next slide? Now, in the next 4 or 5 slides, I'm actually going to talk a lot about some of the experiences that we had creating new age learning experiences for an organization. Now, the specific use case that you're seeing is we work with one of the large car dealership organization, and they posted a very interesting problem to us. They said, we have good video content, we have an excellent mobile learning platform, but the completion ratios are still hovering around 8 to 15%. How do we take this and get it around 85 to 90%? Actually, that was a problem statement that was given to us. And what we did is we said, let's start creating content in the form of web series. So what we did is the part on web series involves about 4 to 5 key design principles. The first design principle is actually creating a mascot. So if you see on the left hand side, we actually looked at who are the people who are going to consume the content. And we actually created a mascot for that specific audience. And we started building a lot of connect between the learner and the specific mascot. That was the first design principle with respect to this format. The second design principle was, just hold on for the video, I'll tell you when to switch it on. The second design principle was around creating a story and a script, which is very, very interesting. Today, we like watching Netflix because it has good content, it has an engaging content, it has a great storyline and a great script involved in it. So take the mascot, create a great storyline and bring humor part of it and leave every episode with a cliffhanger ending so that people are very, very interested to see what is coming next week. So I actually created a 6-episode web series and every episode was released on Monday, Tuesday. So people were very eager to see what is happening next. And then we started tracking the impact. And I'm going to show a small snippet of the video which we created for this, and you'll see the humor it involves. Can you play the video, please? See, the audio isn't coming. Okay, so the audio is not playing. Let me give you a broad view. So we actually created a character called Gangadhar, and we showed that Gangadhar is a salesman. And we showed that a customer walks into the car dealership and says, okay, give me a difference between your car and a competition car. And Gangadhar in the episode 1 fails. He actually goes back home and starts crying, in my first sale, I was not able to give key features of my own product. And we end the episode over there. And we said, wait next week to watch the episode on how Gangadhar solves the problem. And we show Gangadhar is actually Shaktiman. So he uses his superpower to go back in time. And this time he tells the difference between the competition car and the company's car. And the customer is very, very happy. When we released that, the completion ratios went through the roof. So we actually had completion ratios between 85 to 90%. And more important, there was a lot of buzz within the organizations waiting for this episode. So this is one of the formats of content. If you see on the top right, it is expensive. It's not cheap. It's also time consuming. So I'm dividing my learning formats into 2, expensive but engaging. And I'm also going to talk about creating learning content extremely fast and at a very, very reasonable cost. So this fits into the first bucket. Can we move to the next format, please? Now, this is another one. I don't know whether you've seen this movie on Netflix, Bandersnatch. It was a very innovative concept where as you're watching the movie, at some point within the movie, it actually tells the user to take a decision. And based on the decision, the movie changes. So we actually took this value proposition to some of our customers, rather than creating simulations in STORM package format, which are very, very boring, let's start creating interactive movies because you get 2 advantages out of it. One, it's very, very engaging. And 2, you're also assessing them as they move forward. We don't know the impact yet. We are actually working with one of the large insurance companies to actually create a content in this format. This is a very, very interesting format to create interactive simulations in video format. I'm yet to see this format being used by anyone, especially in the L&D side. This is another very interesting format that we are servicing to the customers. So the first 2 formats that you saw, the bar on the engagement was very, very high, but it also involved heavy investments in the cost and time, which was 2 of the big challenges which were mentioned in the polls. Now, the next 3 or 4 slides that we're going to show you is what we call as rapid authoring. The ability given to the organizations to create content really, really fast and at a very, very reasonable format. Just hold on to the video. So let me give you a little bit context. Now, the idea was today's learner is used to learn content in microbyte formats. So today I read my news in shorts. I don't have the patience to see news and read newspaper. So we actually thought, why can't we create a mobile flashcard authoring tool which allows organizations to create their content in extremely fast fashion and at a very, very reasonable cost. So I'm going to show you one video where we actually created, this flash was created today in like 3 or 4 minutes. And this flashcard also had an assessment built into it so that we can assess people whether they have understood the content or not. Can we play the video on the left hand side, please? So there is a template. You actually go and pick up the template. So you see on the left hand side, these are the various template formats. I can actually pick up one of the template format. I go to the next stage. Then there are various formats on the left hand side, a combination of text, image, and videos. I can actually drag one of the format. Now this has image and text. I can go and pick up my image. I can also add my text. I can change the font size. I can change the line spacing. So I can actually quickly go and change the content. I can, this is the way I've added content. Now I can go and create one more flashcard. So I go and add one more flashcard onto it. And this time the second flashcard has to be quiz. So these are the quiz templates on the left hand side. I actually drag a quiz element where I put actually an image and ask a question. So a very, very quick way of authoring content. So think of it, rather than putting PowerPoints which look extremely ugly on mobile phone, you are creating PowerPoint presentations which are suitable for a mobile phone. And I'll show you how a learner will also see. Once it's created, you can also give assessment. If you get the assessment right, you get 10 points. If you get wrong, then you get -2 points. You can also say whether the assessment is mandatory or not and how much time do you want to give them to finish the assessment. A so quick way to actually create mobile-based flashcard, and this is how the learner is going to see. He sees the first flashcard, he swipes on to the right, he sees a quiz comes up and he can attend the quiz. So this falls into the second bracket, which actually allows you to author the content extremely fast. Now I want to talk to you about how can you bring AI into the picture to make this even more interesting. So, we work with some of the organizations in the gig economy side and they say, I have a workforce that talks about 8 different languages. So how do I same flashcard format, but I want to bring an audio element to it. So I'm going to show you a video on the right hand side just to send a context. It has some audio. Can we please try to get an audio on this? So it's very critical to show the audio. So just pause for a second. I'll just give you an idea on the video. So just pause for a second. So the way the context is, you've created the flashcard on the left hand side. Now you have to actually give voiceover to this. And you can decide you want to give the voiceover in which language. So you can say, I want to give it in Hindi, Marathi, English, Spanish. Once you've picked up the language, you can also pick up a voiceover artist. So we are using a lot of Amazon Poly services here and a lot of AI to actually give a voiceover to flashcard, because today a machine voiceover is sounding more and more like human. So we're going to give you a couple of examples where we have actually taken a text string, converted into multiple languages and shown it in different accent, a US accent, a British accent and so on. Can we play the video, please?
Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to People Matters webinar on New Age Learning Formats for Millennials.
Now I'm going to change the accent. This is British.
Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to People Matters webinar on New Age Learning Formats for Millennials.
Now same one with Indian accent in English.
Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to People Matters webinar on New Age Learning Formats for Millennials.
I can also move to a different language.
सभी के लिए शुभ दोपहर. मिलेनियल्स के लिए नए युग के सीखने के प्रारूप पर पीपल मैटर की वेबिनार में आपका स्वागत है.
And another international language, which is Spanish.
Buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos al seminario web de Bioplementar sobre formatos de aprendizaje de la nueva era para los millennials.
So this is what we call rapid authoring. In fact, we're working with a large telecom company which is converting all of their content in this format because that gives them the scale. Can we move to the next slide, please? Third one is gamification. Everyone likes gamified content, but creating gamified content is expensive and again it's time consuming. So what we have done is we work with an organization to provide a game-based authoring engine. So you actually, if you see on the left-hand side, you can pick up out of 6 or 7 games that we have. You can actually upload your own. So one, you can pick up a game template. You can change the theme colors, the music, the mascot on the game. Then you can upload your questions and define whether it has multiple attempts, whether it has positive points, negative points, and then learners actually play that game. And based on the performance in the game, the leaderboards are created, which is shown on the right-hand side. I'll show you one of the video, which is a jump game where the person is playing the game at some particular point and milestone, it actually pops up the questions within the game and he has to answer the questions. Can we play that video, please? So this is another very quick way where organization can create gamified assessments instead of boring MCQ questions. And we work and add more and more templates. Currently, there are about 7 gaming templates. The idea is to keep adding the game-based templates so that there is a variety for the learners. Can we move to the next part? Now the next one is this. This is again the problem statement that was given to us by one of the organization. They said, SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, are extremely important for this organization. And this organization actually had 250 SOPs. So what they said is, if I give the SOPs in the Word and the flowchart formats, people are not interested in reading. That's one problem. The second problem is, if I actually go and spend money and convert them into SCORM simulations, these SOPs change very, very often. So it's a huge challenge for us and time and cost basis to go and change the SOPs. And the third problem is they had actually presence all over India. So they said creating in multiple languages is a nightmare. So what we said, why don't we start using conversational AI? So we use AI. So instead of the learner actually going to the SOP, let a bot walk the person through a specific SOP. And inbuilt within the SOPs are also assessment. So you are actually evaluating people whether they are understanding the content or not. So this was one part. The second part was we didn't want them to actually rely on us to create this bot. So we also gave them an authoring tool so that they can create their own bots in any languages they want and they publish it to the learners. So this was trying to get high scale. You can actually change the content. There was one point on refreshing content. You can also refresh the content and with a click of the button, it goes to the learner. So I'm going to show you one of the SOP, first in English format, then in Hindi format, and then I will also show you how you can go and create this bot. So can we play the video, please? So first we pick up the language.
Hello, let's look at the process we follow with personal loans for salaried employees at Bajaj. At Bajaj, the process of closing a personal loan for salaried customers traverses through 3 layers, namely sales, credit and operations. For instance, let's say an agent is following up on the status of a loan application. He has provided you some details. Please select the action you would take. What would you do next to assist the customer?
So you actually evaluate people also.
Verification has been initiated. All mandatory documents must be submitted.
Now the same one in Hindi format.
आइए देखते हैं कि वेतनभोगी कर्मचारियों के लिए बजाज द्वारा पर्सनल लोन यानी व्यक्तिगत ऋण प्राप्त करने की प्रक्रिया क्या है।
Now we'll show you how this is actually created. So the way it's created, you actually go and create your own bot. You say it's in which language. So here I've selected English and Hindi. And I also say who's the voiceover artist for this. So we have about 50, 60 people. You pick up the voiceover artist. Then you define every step of the SOP. So they don't have to rely on us. They can go and create your own SOPs. And with a click of button can publish it in any specific languages they want. So today we use Google's translation and Amazon Poly services to marry them together. But they only provide us English and Hindi. But we are now working to add vernacular languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam. So very soon we will, with a click of button, you will be able to publish the same content in any number of languages that you want. So this is another way of rapid authoring on creating a new age content format, which is in the form of an AI conversational bot. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, we spoke currently about two dimensions. We talked about very engaging content, which is very, very expensive. We also talk about rapid authoring. So we actually create content really, really fast at a very, very reasonable cost. So both of these pillars revolves around creation. If you remember, we talked about creation and we talked about curation. Now it's important to actually provide the ability of curating content also. Now we know today that you can actually go and buy courses from edX and Coursera, which are expensive, but there is tons and tons of content which is available on free. But it's actually a nightmare to identify the right content and then give that content to the learner in the flow of the work. So this was a problem statement that was positioned to us. Now our solution to this was very, very simple. We went to the organization and said, tell us which repositories are important to us. So organization said, TED channel on YouTube is great, Goldcast is great, McKinsey articles are great, EY content is great. So what we did is we wrote our crawlers which actually went through these areas and meta tagged all of the content. That was the step number one we did. Step number two, we also went and tagged it to their skill and competency framework. What it means is very simple. For example, I work for a large manufacturing company in the sales department. One of the skills which is very, very important for me is meet and greet. So if there is a great video on TED channel with respect to meet and greet, it should automatically come to me. I should not go and hunt for it. So we are actually going to show you a video where we have crawled certain content. We have actually tagged it so that it becomes searchable. And third, we have also delivered it based on the skill that the person needs. Can we play the video, please? So here I'm actually going and searching for a content, let's say electrical vehicles. So it goes and search web, which is free content. You're not paying anything for it. And on the left hand side, if you see, these are McKinsey articles, which are related to electrical vehicles. I can also go and see, show me on content on Forbes website with respect to electrical vehicles. So I also have content from Forbes. Now I'm also interested to see the content from TED. So I also see TED videos which revolve around electrical vehicles. When I click on it, I automatically take you to YouTube and you consume the content. So actually, we provide the power of delivering the content based on the need that you have. Then this content gets played. So one, we actually allow you to tag it based on the sources, but we also provide it based on the skills. So let's say I'm a customer support guy and customer orientation is a skill that is provided to me. Then I can also see it based on the skill. So it's the same content then also comes from a skill repository. So you don't have to go hunt. If you see on the left hand side, the content is fed into my feed automatically based on the skill. So this is very, very powerful. Why it is powerful? You are exploiting the entire web and you're not paying for it. Because all we are doing is the AI crawlers are taking the ability to actually tag the content and deliver at right time, at right place. Can we move to the next slide? So the last slide is the idea about how can you make your existing micro-learning content more interesting. So give the ability for an L&D provider to actually add pop-up quizzes within the video. So what we did is when you're uploading content on your learning platform, give the ability to put pop-up quizzes within the video. So it will show you one of the video and it will put a pop-up quiz. If you don't get the quiz right, it will not move the video forward. It will again go back and ask you to watch the clip or retake the question. Can we play the video, please? And there is the question. If I get the question wrong, it will ask me to watch the clip again or retake the question. If I give the answer right, the video will move forward. So just to summarize, what are we trying to tell? So, as we started the poll, clearly time and money was a big parameter in creating content. So you can use some of the tools which are basically on rapid authoring, which basically includes flashcards, Amazon Poly Services to do a voiceover or do a conversational AI bot. The second one, if money is not a problem for you, but you want to provide extremely engaging content, then we create web series content, or we create interactive movies for you. And the last part was revolving around how to exploit online content, which is available both in the form of paid and free, but take the hassle of searching and tagging it, but providing it automatically based on the competency or the skill framework of the organization. So that's broadly some of the services which actually adds a lot of value for the organization. I hand it over to Shweta.
Thank you, Kuljit. So as we start, you sort of assimilating all the wonderful technology that that Kuljit just shared with you, and it's really amazing to see how far learning technology, what Disperse has done with what learning technology can be done. I think it's important for us to sit and think about what we can do to put it all together. We have a little polling question for you. Can we see that, please? You can post that and just tell us what our participants think about what is the most difficult challenge in terms of that L&D professionals face. Okay, so I have been told please go to Menti and type the code menti.com and type the code 725645 to answer the polling question. I just repeat that, 725645. And in a minute, we shall have responses. Okay, is there, can you look at the graph? I am not able to see the screen.
Shweta, at the bottom, just click on Drishti screen.
All right, okay. Yeah, so that part of, I just see 6 participants and I'm not able to do that, but that's fine. If you can tell me what are most of the participants coming out as a highlight?
We can actually, we've got 31 responses and majority of the respondents have chosen get learner to demonstrate learn skills at work. That's the first one. And the second one is a tie between ensure the right content is available to the learners and make sure that employees are feeling incentivized to learn. But clearly, learner to demonstrate learn skills at work is leading.
Is leading. Excellent. So if we were to, and can we just move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. So to put, before we get on with how do we really look at putting it all together, all of these that are here are important challenges. Making sure that the right content is available to the learners is very critical because we are literally drowning in content. Like Kuljit mentioned, there's YouTube, there's TEDx, there's so much. So in some sense, psychologically, it's like a very hungry person going to a supermarket. Um, they are drowned for choice, so chances are they will not take any action because I have too many choices. Which is why curating it and constructing it and sculpting it into a small, bite-sized, these are the two things I need to do next, is very important. Making sure that employees are feeling incentivized to learn is also important, and we'll talk about the psychology why that happens. Getting in top leadership buy-in is, and I'm saying this from my experience, being on the other side as an L&D professional, because let's not forget, L&D exists in a context of increasing people capabilities to basically show organizational impact, and almost invariably we do get asked the question, what is the ROI? How are you kind of showing that, what is the sort of bang for the buck? And we know this, that with human behaviors, change doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen in 6 months. In my experience, I've been doing this work for 20 years, and I mean, I'm a certified coach, but even with coaching, it takes a long, long time for actual behaviors to sort of translate to the working place. So yes, absolutely. Getting learner to demonstrate learned skills at work is very, very important. Let's talk a little bit about why. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So, when people talk about learning a new concept, and, Kuljit talked about multiple things. He talked about the use of skills. He talked about learning skills, learning technology, doing it in the language that you prefer, using a source that you prefer. Uh, the organizational can author it internally, get it sourced externally. But the moment the learner sees it, the first thing that happens when you tell someone that you have to learn something, it invokes learning anxiety. Because learning anxiety comes from a place where the learner, either consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously knows that if I have to learn something new, it means that I have to now do something new. And that invokes anxiety. The only way learning anxiety comes down or can be lowered is actually by increasing survival anxiety. So there's a lot of work done in terms of adult development, as well as studying the mindsets of people who are actually able to do that and under what conditions. The simplest example of trying to share this with you, because this will take a long time, but if you think of a toddler that is learning to walk, now, it's not like toddlers are not afraid of falling down and hurting themselves. In fact, they're quite scared. But what happens is all of the time, they are incredibly, at that point in time, they're developing their gross motor skills, and they're feeling extremely excited about walking and locomotion. They want to move. And I don't know if for those of you who have children, you will see that a lot of the parents and um, uh, caregivers um, have a lot of these incentivized where they say, why don't you sort of come? So incentivize the learner to make the change and the switch seems to be one of the first steps. But before that, there's a question here. We're going to come to this in a minute. Um, let's move on now and let's talk about what we can actually do to create these small bite-sized, digestible journeys which actually ensure behavior transfer at work. Yeah. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Uh, Most of you or all of you must have already seen Kolbe's cycle. Learning is easy, transferring it to skills is not. Um, if you look at the right hand side, there's a little diagram that I have shared. It's something that we use a lot. Uh, Before learning, if there is some way to prepare and commit, sort of get the learner to commit to something, that starts as a very, very important phase in this whole process. Um, and then using technology to kind of acquire the skill, in terms of relevance, in terms of applicability to job, etc., etc. The next step is to able to, or rather enable the learner to build muscle memory, which basically means it should the flow between technology or the learning interface and doing work has to go back and forth, and there have to be multiple checkpoints so that the person tries something new, makes a mistake, and says, I'm doing this, but it's really not working. It could be something as simple as giving feedback, different techniques of giving feedback. How do I switch between doing a performance feedback and having a coaching feedback? Or it could be about using a new technology in the workplace. And then bringing it back to a point where the learner can actually see. So if you see this, the cycle ends with desired outcome, and the most important, and here's the most important part, right? The learner commitment increases when they are able to see that the impact of their learning on their behavior. This is a very, very important part of that many organizations forget and actually don't tap into. Let's talk a little bit more about how do we do this and why creating these learning journeys, is important using multiple anchors of the HR processes. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Before we create, when we construct a learning journey, and I can share this from my experience in my previous organization where I did work very closely with Disperse client. We are also working very closely with Disperse now. We find that there is actually a formula for constructing learning journeys. So using technology for understanding and testing of concepts is important so that people know what we're talking about. Using face-to-face facilitated sessions for people to talk about the dilemmas and paradoxes and difficulties in transferring this at work. So creating some sort of a shared reflection space. And then finally using technology for post-learning assessment again. So we have recently we've created a new product, which is the first time managers journey, which is a 6-month journey for first time managers. There's going to be a 50-50 sort of split between technology and face-to-face assessment. So, and this is again, if we truly want to make um, participants, learners, be able to do something differently, we have to give them an opportunity to come together and talk about why am I not able to do this? What is my difficulty? And learn from other learners. Yeah. I'm going to move on now because I also want us to have some time to ask questions. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, from the learner's point of view, and I like this one because it says, if you learn one more thing, I'll explode. Think about it. There is a lot happening, right? There's a lot of anxiety because the constant messaging is your skills are becoming obsolete. There's so much in the world. You need to change. You need to be relevant. Oh, and by the way, you have this platform where you can learn in 500 different ways. You need to update your skills regularly. It is invoking a lot of anxiety. Um, and organizations, many organizations, not all, many organizations are saying we've created platforms, we've created programs, but people aren't showing up. And if they're showing up, they aren't engaged. If they are engaged, we're still not seeing the final translation into a new behavior. So what we found very useful in terms of the checkpoints is start by integrating the learning system with the performance management system. Collate cues from the performance management system help the learner to break it down into few word clouds in terms of what are the one or two things that I need to do differently. Maybe I need to learn if I'm a finance person or a fintech person or a tech person, just one or two things in terms of the rational part of what I need to do differently, and maybe one or two people skills. So give your learner 2 or 3 things that they need to learn. Then using all the technology, whether it is a web crawler or whether it is self-authored flashcards, have them learn it, learn the concepts, give them spaces for reflection, um, and then because we have connected it with the performance management system, having the manager come in at different points in time in the learner's journey to talk about is there a difference or not, um, will will incentivize the learner greatly. Not only that, when the manager comes in, the big advantage that happens is you're bringing in manager's skin in the game. So no longer is the feedback about, the feedback cannot be vague because it starts by saying, what do you want, let's say Shweta, who's a learner, to do differently at the end of this journey? The very fact that the manager has to now sit and think about it just changes the nature of the learning journey. So, like we said, don't drown the learner in a supermarket of content. Content is the first step. So don't stop there. Think about it when you're constructing your learner journeys. Think about it from the learner's point of view. And I cannot stress enough on the importance of focusing the learner on no more than 2 to 3 themes, nothing more than 3 themes. Give them, and we found from research that it on an average takes about 12 to 15 months for behaviors to start changing, assuming that we're doing all of this. So with that, I want to give, I know we have 9 minutes left, so if there are any questions for Kuljit and me, happy to hand it back to People Matters.
Thank you, Shweta and Kujit, for your great insights. Now we will be moving to the Q&A section. But before I take the questions from the audience, I had a question for both of you. In the context of new age learning formats for new age employees, what is the one thing that you think L&D leaders, L&D teams should start doing, and one thing that they should stop doing? If both of you can share your inputs on that.
Kuljit, do you want to go first?
So, in my mind, I think one of the things I would like to see in organizations is to move away from a course-based learning to a skill-based learning. I think it's high time that organizations start looking at every employee and decides what are the skills that he needs to do his job better, and then provide the content which is relevant to make him better at what he does. So that's what I would like, and I would like organizations to stop doing course-based learning and a push-based learning. That's my personal opinion. Shweta, over to you.
Yeah, I think I was going to say that one of the things L&D teams should do now, because you have so much technology available, is involve the learner in co-creation of what they want to learn. Nothing increases learning commitment more than signing up for something yourself. So I think they should start doing that. What they should stop is, stop, I think, push-based learning. And I think the messaging that L&D teams, and I include myself in that because we've done that, is the messaging is very, if I may use the word, patronizing. So when I was just recently reading an article about L&D communication, not enough work being done there, but the way we invite a learner, what we say to them, sets the tone of what the learner can expect. And I think we need to be a little more careful there.
So how do we market our own learning programs? That's important for them in a way.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first question from the audience we have is from Shruti, who's asking, can you share an example of how L&D teams can create, curate, and maintain refreshing content? Kuljit, you want to take it up?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
Sure. So can you share an example of how L&D teams can create, curate, or maintain refreshing content? Because you had touched upon this topic of, how important is refreshing content. But how can organizations create and maintain that they have refreshing content for the learners?
So, if I'm part of an L&D team of an organization, I would like to look at the content in 2 dimensions. Things on the horizontal axis, you have various skills. So you identify what skills are relevant for your organization, and on the vertical axis, you look at what are the proficiencies. Are you looking for customer orientation for someone who's just trying to understand customer orientation, who is an expert or a master on that? You look at 2 dimensions, and then you start creating content around 2 dimensions. And we provided multiple tools to you which can help you create the content, and regularly visit back to see, for this specific skill, is that content relevant or not. I think that's the approach. So great content management tool, along with the ability of tagging the content to a specific skill and a particular proficiency.
So next question that we have is from Philomena, who's asking, in an industry as vast and different from mainstream market as accounting and consulting, what is the one thing that needs maximum focus? Shweta, you want to take it up?
Sure. I think, okay, so one thing that I think a very large, and you talk about accounting and consulting, which is very, very, very large, but also in some sense, very, very traditional. The one thing that I think organizations don't do is prepare employees in these industries for role transitions. It is just assumed that people will get in and know. So a new employee to manager, manager to leader of a department, or a leader to a CEO, it is assumed that just because they are good at their job, these transitions will happen automatically. It does not happen. And especially in consulting organizations, I would say that this is something that is really, really critical. So
Kuljeet, do you want to?
enabling employees for role transitions, I would say, is one thing that should be focused on.
All right. Kuljeet, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think he was absolutely right. I think there's some other questions that we can.
Yes, sure. The next question is from Rohan, who's asking what is one thing that will not change in New Age learning format for New Age employees? I think both of you should answer this one.
I think I'm a firm believer that blended learning works. I think there was also a point of single touch point. I think learning has to be blended. It has to be continuous, and I don't think face-to-face classroom learning is going to go away. It's going to shrink, but it is there to stay. So I think that's one thing Rohan is not going to change. The instructor-led training, the face-to-face training, it will keep coming down, but will not vanish.
Shweta, your thoughts?
I think, as long as we continue, human beings continue to be of flesh and blood, I think the need to give time for learners to be able to digest what we have told them to do, give them practice, that need will not go away. It will not go away. We can do it in many different ways, technology blended. And I don't know if you guys have tried out the platform, but Disperse has a great platform. But using whatever technology you can, I don't think that's going to go away. Learner anxiety is not going to go away either.
Yeah.
Well, Rishi, I would like to take that last question. I think
Yes, I was going to ask you that question only because I think you're the best person to answer that. That how do you measure the effectiveness or impact of trainings delivered through digital platforms? And we've spoken about it that in this entire session. So I think you should take this up.
So that's like $1 million question, right? So when you go to your boss and ask them for money, the first thing they're going to ask is, okay, all this is great, but what is the ROI on what you're doing?
Yes.
So we keep getting asked this question quite often, and we want to change this perspective. We want organizations to not look at L&D as a cost driver, but change the perception to move it from a cost driver to a revenue driver. How can you do that? Now we're working on organizations with a framework. We've actually created a framework where we track performance versus potential. So imagine that on the horizontal axis, you have performance. And if you want to track the performance, you actually want to integrate to certain business processes. For sales, you would like to integrate with your sales CRM. For a customer support, you would like to integrate with your customer feedback forms and all that stuff. And on the vertical axis, you have potential, which is basically tracked based on the assessment that you're doing on digital platforms. Shweta mentioned that when you're doing the journey, you consume the learning module, but you bring an intervention which is in the form of an assessment. That will actually tell you for that specific skill, what is the potential that the person has. Now, when you take an organization which is, let's say, 1,000, 2,000 employees, you take all of these people and then put them into a 4x4 box. Where there is performance and there is potential. Anyone who's on the top, they're performing well and the potential is strong, they're the best people to have. But the idea is building a personalized strategy, a personalized learning path to move people from other quadrants to the topmost quadrant. And when you work with the organization, you do a baseline over here. This is how your quadrant looks before you started an L&D function, L&D intervention. And let's look at after a quarter, 6 months, and 1 year. And you actually prove that the people are moving from these 3 different quadrants to the topmost quadrant. And if a person is not moving, it's better to let them go. Shweta, you would like to add anything? Because this is one area which you
All
are
right, so we will.
an expert at.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Kuljit. And I think, like I said, right, when you do learner journeys and you build in manager and employee self-assessments, that's the beauty that actually, if you can create learner journeys, and I can tell this from experience, blended learning journeys on a technology platform with built-in assessments will actually tell you how do you measure the effectiveness or impact, because we actually did that. And when you ask an employee that you started off at a level 5, where are you today, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you able to do X, Y, and Z? When the learner or the participants brain and being is engaged with learning, many learners, in fact, we've seen that again and again, uh, the feedback and assessment is very clear, like I've moved one, I'm able to do 1 2, but I'm not able to do the third. uh, and I think that is what will be able to talk about the effectiveness of the learning journey.
Thank you, Shweta and Kuljit. I think we are overshooting time now, so and we have some more questions coming in. So maybe I request you, both of you, to take these questions offline later on.
Absolutely, happy to do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
But before
People matters. Thanks, Shweta.
Thanks, Kuljit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Before I wrap up the session, I just wanted to thank our partner Disperse and both of you, Kuljit and Shweta, for the invaluable information that you've shared with our audience today, for your time. And I would request the audience also to share their feedback in the survey link provided in the chat section, because their input matters. And I would now conclude today's webcast, and stay tuned for many more such exciting sessions. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.